Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Melody Daniel Luna and I am a fantasy author. I'm the author of the new high fantasy series, The Sun and Moon Saga, and I am a musician. I'm the lead singer in the band Ghost of a Girl, and we have our debut album coming out in March. I'm really excited about that. And I'm also an aspiring illustrator. And this video is going to be primarily about that last point, the aspiring illustrator point, because I want to talk about that. As you can see, I've synced this audio up to a video of me drawing a picture. I'm not sure if you saw my last video, Make a Wish at Secret Lake, but I've been making these little ambient soundscapes of different places from New Camelot, which is my high fantasy world, the setting to the Sun and Moon Saga. So I've been drawing various places in New Camelot, such as the Greenlandian forest or Secret Lake, and then I've been syncing those drawings up with sounds and music and quotes from the book, and then I've been creating these videos and putting them on my YouTube channel. I only have 2 soundscapes out so far, but I do plan on making more because I really enjoy making these. I really enjoy making these. It's fun, it's very creative. I get to draw, I get to play around with audio engineering, finding different samples of nature sounds on the internet, or taking my own samples that I can get on my hikes, and then syncing it up with music that I've written or with quotes from my book, and then putting it with the images. Like, it's a very creative thing, and I have a lot of fun creating these. Now, much to my dismay, these videos tend to not do as well as the videos where I'm just talking, which makes sense because I feel like the content where I'm just talking about the creative process and about writing in general, it's a little bit more searchable, and it just makes sense that these videos where I'm talking tend to do better than the videos where it's very self-indulgent and geeky and like very unique, because like I don't know if the algorithm quite knows what to do with those, but anyway, I'm going to make them regardless because I really enjoy making them. Part of it is just because I love seeing my fantasy world come together in a whole new way, because I've been writing in this fantasy world for, it'll be 10 years this summer, I guess. Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. I'm going to be having my 10-year anniversary with New Camelot. Whew. That's crazy. But, you know, I've been writing in this fantasy world for a decade, basically, and to be able to create in this world, but like through other mediums, through sound, through art, it's amazing. It feels amazing. It feels like I'm actually going to New Camelot and exploring and discovering things, and it really fuels my writing. So I'm going to keep making these things, and I really hope that people enjoy them. I hope, you know, you could read to them, be it my book or be it somebody else's book. I hope you could write to them if you're a writer. I hope that you could study to them, relax to them, whatever you want to do. I just think that I'm always listening to ambient soundscapes and ambient music. I'm always putting on ambient noises in the background when I'm going about my day. So I just kind of asked myself, what would you want if you were already a fan of the books? What would you want? And I'd be like, well, I'd want an ambient soundscape. So I've been making those, and one of the reasons I like making those, as I said, is because I get to explore New Camelot, my fantasy world. But the other reason is that I get to improve my drawing. So remember how I said that this video is going to primarily be about that whole aspiring illustrator thing? Well, let's get into that. So I have been working on my writing and on my music for a very long time, both of those things. Music, I started when I was a kid. I was in music lessons, I think before I was even in elementary school. And music is something that a lot of my family members do. So it's really in my family. It's really in my blood. It was really in my upbringing. So music is something that's just always been with me. I've always been working on music in some kind of way. As a kid, it was piano lessons and choir. And then I got into musical theater. And then I got my guitar and I started songwriting. And then I started doing rock music and then electronic music. And now I make, well, my boyfriend / songwriting partner, he says it's chamber pop. I'm really bad with genre. I'm just going to go with what he says on that because I'm just truthfully very bad at lumping things into genres. It's one of my weaknesses. But we make like an amalgamation of many different things, from chamber pop to folk. There's elements of jazz. There's elements of musical theater. It's all acoustic driven. But it's been a really long time coming here to this project. I'm really proud of Ghost of a Girl. I'm really proud of the songs that I've been writing and that me and my partner have been writing. I'm really proud of the way that my vocals are sounding on the recordings. I'm really proud of the lyrics that I've been writing, the storytelling that I've brought into the album. But, you know, it's been many, many years in the making to get to the point where I could create something like this that I am so proud of. And with writing, it's a very similar thing. I've been doing creative writing since I was a little kid. And in 2015, a decade ago, I got the idea for the Sun and Moon Saga. I started building the world. I started writing here and there. I didn't commit myself to the project until 2017. Then I spent 2017 on writing and rewriting and revising and editing and really learning writing craft. And, you know, I think it's been 7 years to a decade of writing and like taking my story, the Sun and Moon Saga, seriously. And it's been about 5 years of like really working on my writing craft and on my story craft. So there's been many, many hours put into both of those pursuits, many, many hours put into writing and into music. And so even though I know how much work I've put in, it's easy for me to take for granted what I can create using those mediums. And I'm not trying to say that I'm an amazing writer or an amazing musician. I'm just saying, like, I've got some skills that I've worked on, and I have some natural talent that I've at least started to learn how to harness. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm not like there. I know that there's still, so I can still go so much further. So I'm not saying that I am a master or anything like that, but I've put a lot of time into these crafts, so it's easy, even though I know how much work it's been, it's easy to kind of take that for granted. Whereas with my drawing, I mean, every time I sit down to draw, that's when I kind of realize, wow, I've put a lot of time into my writing and my music, because I can sit down and write, and these days I'll be satisfied, like, I don't know, 9 times out of 10. Like, most writing sessions are satisfying. Obviously, some more than others, and I still do have days where I kind of flop. But with drawing, it's so hit and miss. I'm basically in this very early experimental phase where I'm like just trying to get into the habit of doing it somewhat consistently, which is tricky because I can't have this new habit of drawing override my habit of writing. And I also have music to do, which I do mainly with my partner. So there's a lot of different things that need to get done in a given day, in a given week, in a given month, in a given year. But drawing is something that I am learning. And Today I'm going to tell you the story about why I'm learning to draw, why this is important to me. Because it's not so much that I want to be like a professional artist. You know, it's not so much that I want to sell prints. It's not so much that I want to be someone who's like known for their art in the way that I want that with my writing and with my music. Like with my writing, I'm writing books. The books are the product. With my music, I'm creating albums. The albums are the product. But with art, what I really want to do is illustrate my own work, illustrate my own writing. I want to be able to create covers for my books. I want to be able to illustrate my books, make picture books. I want to be able to draw album artwork for my albums. I want to be able to make comic books and tarot card decks. Like, it's not so much that I want the art to be the main focus of the thing that I'm creating, but I want these things that I'm creating, these books, these albums, I want them to be 100% me. And, well, I guess in the case of music, I want it to be 50% me, 50% my partner, Eric. But you know what I mean? Like, I want these things to feel like they came from my soul, like they are 100% me. And I, like, for me, like, just, you know, grabbing a stock image and creating a quick cover on Canva, it's just not going to cut it. Like, I need to illustrate these covers. I don't know why I feel that way, but I kind of do know why I feel that way. So this is the story. Basically, 2023, this is a whole other story in and of itself, but 2023 was a bit of a flop year for me. I really struggled in 2023. There was a couple of things at play, but for the context of this story, really what was going on was that I had kind of lost touch with my reason for why I was writing at all. And I mean, the good thing that happened that year was that I really got back in touch with music. That's when I started songwriting with my partner, and we wrote a bunch of songs that year that are on our upcoming album. And I'm so proud of those songs that we wrote, and I'm so glad that I did get back in touch with my love for music, because that was something that I hadn't done for 3 years. So music was going well, but writing was not going well, because I had finished my first book. I had done developmental edits, I had done line edits, I had done copy edits, and I was submitting my first book and I was getting rejected. And this is very normal. It's really nothing, like when you think about it logically, it's nothing to fret about, but I was really just stressed about it. Now, I wasn't like crying about it every day. I wasn't like sad about it. I think the thing is, I wasn't letting myself be sad about it. I was telling myself logically, like, well, most authors don't get in with their first book, so let's write something else. And I was writing this other project, this horror novel that had nothing to do with New Camelot or the Sun and Moon Saga. And I was enjoying that. It was a fun novel. I enjoyed writing it, but it didn't feel like me in the same way that the Sun and Moon Saga did. So, and I wasn't letting myself grieve the fact that Aurora and Luna didn't get accepted. I wasn't letting myself feel my feelings over these rejections. So, you know, when we cut ourselves off from our emotions, we're cutting ourselves off from ourselves. And by midway through the year, even though, you know, everything was great on paper, I had great apartment, great partner, great job, you know, things were going well financially. Everything was going well on paper. Even though that was happening, I was feeling more and more disconnected from myself. I was writing about these feelings in the album, yes, so that was good. I'm glad I had that outlet. But I was also doing a lot of book shopping to kind of cover up how I was feeling because, well, if I couldn't publish my book, I could at least go and buy 5 books randomly and just pick ones that seemed good to me. Like, every time I bought a book, a new fantasy novel or a new witchy book or a little children's picture book, every time I went and bought something impulsively, I felt like for a split second, there was a connection with myself. There was a feeling that I was getting in touch with, and it was a coping tool. It wasn't healthy. But one thing that happened is I bought a bunch of picture books and I bought a bunch of children's books. Now, something else that kind of happened around this time, a little bit earlier, like 2022, 2023, is that when it came to reading, I started to lean more towards nonfiction rather than fiction. And this had never been the case. I had always read more fiction than nonfiction before this, but I was reading like a lot of personal development and I was reading a lot of witchy books and metaphysical books. A lot of just random things that I wanted to learn as well. I'm not really sure why. It's just what I kind of wanted to read at that time. But towards the end of 2023, because I had impulsively bought all these books, a lot of them fiction, I started to get back into reading fiction more regularly, which is good because writers need that. Fiction writers, anyway. We need to be reading fiction. And I didn't read enough fiction for most of 2023, but I started reading more fiction again. And at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, I started reading a lot of children's fiction, and like looking back, I can see that my higher self was leading me through this book buying addiction. It was leading me to this children's fiction because this children's fiction was going to, number one, remind me of where my love of storytelling started, because it started in childhood. It started before I even read Harry Potter, which was my first novel. You know, Harry Potter is one of my biggest inspirations. Not a huge fan of the things J.K. Rowling has said. Really not a huge fan of that, but that's not what this video is about. Harry Potter was one of my main inspirations for why I wanted to become a fantasy author, but there are some other inspirations before that I had kind of not forgotten about, but lost touch with. Probably because I was busy, caught up in the mundane day-to-day routine of being an adult, and, you know, the idea of sitting down with a cup of tea and reading a picture book, maybe, you know, that's not something that we always prioritize as adults. But for me, I started doing that again at the end of 2023. And in 2024, I read almost exclusively fiction. I knew that I needed to do that to get back in touch with my source motivation for writing. And in the beginning of the year, a lot of children's books. I read a lot of children's books. So one of the books that I read was The Complete Brambly Hedge by Jill Barklam. And I fell in love with this book. I am so surprised that I did not read this as a kid because, oh my God, it is, I'm just looking at the book right now. It is, I just would have adored it as a kid. It's just got the most charming illustrations. And it has these really cool illustrations that like show you the inside of, because it's about anthropomorphic mice, and it has these really cool illustrations that show you the inside of the mouse's house and show you every single room, like almost like a map of their house. And oh my God, like as a kid, I would have just loved this. As an adult, I loved it. And then I read a little bit about the author, and I learned that she actually illustrated all this work herself. She wrote the book, she wrote the stories, and she illustrated them. And there was another book that I read. Now, this isn't really fiction, it's poetry, but it's kind of like fiction. So I read, I don't know if I'm going to say her name properly, but Cecily Mary Barker. She wrote the Flower Fairies poems. So I read all the 4 seasonal collections: spring, summer, autumn, winter. And I soon learned that not only did she write the poetry, but she also drew these beautiful illustrations. Now, both of these reading experiences reminded me of Beatrix Potter, who is one of my favorite children's authors. Nothing to do with Harry Potter, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar. Beatrix Potter wrote and illustrated Peter Rabbit. That's her most famous work. But there's actually a whole collection of animal stories. Mrs. Tiggywinkle, Jeremy Fisher, Tom Kitten, The Tailor of Gloucester. There's this whole collection, and she wrote and illustrated all of them. And fun fact, I had a treasury of Beatrix Potter stories in childhood, but last year I realized that they were not the originals. The artwork was eerily similar, and the stories were eerily similar, but like the stories were the same, but the words were eerily similar, but they actually weren't the originals. So in 2024, in the springtime, because the springtime is just a good time to read Beatrix Potter, in my opinion, I bought Beatrix Potter, The Complete Tales, this beautiful, beautiful edition of her the entire treasury of her work, and it had all these stories, even stories that weren't in the retelling treasury that I had as a kid, and I read all of them, and I loved it because it had a little write-up about each story, about what she was doing, where she was at in her life at the time of writing that story. Anyway, all of this is to say, reading all of these books, it reminded me of my childhood dream that I had, because as a kid, I would read stories, picture books, poems, novels, and I would always ask my parents, why doesn't the author ever illustrate the book? Because as a kid, I would be writing my own stories, I'd be writing my own books, and I would be illustrating them. Not very good stories and not very good illustrations, but that's just something that I love to do. My favorite thing to do, my favorite way to spend the afternoon was to write a collection of stories, or to write a story and illustrate them. Like that was my favorite thing. So it's a shocker that I'm a fantasy novelist now. And it's a shocker that I want to illustrate my own work now. So getting back in touch with this source motivation, Beatrix Potter, and seeing how she had not only written these charming stories, but illustrated them as well, it reminded me of that dream, and it made me go, oh my God, like, I want to illustrate my own work. And what was weird is that, unrelated, I had already started drawing again. So I had been drawing on and off for a long time, I guess my whole life, but not consistently, not nearly as consistently as writing and music. It's just something that I've always dabbled in, because I'm a creative person, and creative people like to try different mediums. But yeah, I had never really put the effort in to learn how to properly draw. I had never practiced my drawing. I had never learned technique. It was just something that I had never really pursued. And one of the reasons that is because I wasn't really encouraged to pursue art, because it wasn't something that I was just like naturally good at. Like, I'm naturally a good musician. I have a good ear. I can sing very easily. I've always been able to sing. I've always been able to carry a tune. And I'm naturally a good storyteller. I'm not naturally the best technical writer. I've had to put a lot of hours into that. But I'm naturally a good storyteller. I can tell a story. But with drawing, like, I was kind of average, like maybe a little bit of talent, just in the sense that I'm naturally creative. So I would at least have the courage to try, but I wasn't naturally gifted. You know what I mean? So I wasn't encouraged to pursue it. So I just kind of never did. But, you know, through the years, I've kept various sketchbooks, and I really enjoy drawing because it's very calming. It's very meditative, and it's just a fun way to express yourself. I remember back in college, I took an elective, and I took an art class for that elective, and we had to keep a sketchbook where we drew, I think, every day for 30 days or something like that. And knowing that I could literally fill the sketchbook with anything each day, and it was almost like keeping a visual diary. So I had actually started drawing again, but that was before this dream of becoming my own illustrator had resurfaced. I think the reason why I started drawing again, well, my higher self probably knew deep down that I wanted to be my own illustrator, but I think the reason why I had started drawing, if I remember correctly, is just because I wanted a creative outlet that was just for fun. Because writing I was taking, and still am taking, very, very seriously. But especially at that time, like, I was really, really focused on success and getting a book deal and being an author with a capital A and being successful and blah, blah, blah. Making it. So that was really weighing me down and kind of like tainting the beauty of the writing process. And music was becoming more that way as well. See, when we first started writing together, I had been on a hiatus from music. I had been on a break from music for 3 years. And then we started writing together, and it was just for fun, you know? It was just a nice creative outlet. But then by and by, like, it got more and more serious. And I wanted to perform again, and I wanted to create this album and promote it on social media, and it became more like something that I was pursuing, which is good because I love music and I'm glad that I'm pursuing it again. But I just wanted a creative outlet at this point, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do drawing. So I just started drawing, just started mucking about in my sketchbook. No real aim, but then, you know, midway through the year, I realized I wanted to be my own illustrator. And I kind of like, not ignored, but just kind of didn't fully act on it for a while, you know, like mainly because it was easy to distract myself by being busy with day-to-day life. But by the fall, I had really come to terms with the fact that I wanted to illustrate my own work. And that's when I started creating these soundscapes. And that's when I started just regularly drawing different characters and places and creatures from New Camelot. And it's been an amazing experience. Now, I am still very much a newbie beginner artist. And I really want to just make that known, that I know that, I'm aware of that. And yet I'm sharing my art with the internet. I'm sharing my art with the world. Why? Why am I doing that? Why don't I wait, 5 or 10 years until I'm ready? Because that's kind of what I did with my writing. Like with my writing, nobody saw my book until, I only just put out the first book in the Sun and Moon Saga, the first 2 books last year. And I had been working on both of those books for like 9 years at that point. And before that, only a handful of people had read it. So why am I taking a different approach with art? Why am I showing my journey with art? Well, there's a couple of things. With writing, I'm glad that I waited to publish until I felt truly ready, because I'm putting out a better series of books now than I would if I had published back in 2020 or even 2022. Not that I'm a perfect writer. I've still got plenty to learn, but I have worked on some of the technical side of the craft, and I have worked on my prose, and I have worked on my storytelling too. So, I'm genuinely proud of the work I'm putting out now. So I'm glad I waited, but I do wish I had shown my journey a little bit more. Not in the sense that I wish that I had put the book out sooner, but just in the sense that I wish I had vlogged about my writing process more. I wish I had, talked about my journey as a writer more on Instagram or whatever social media. I just wish I had shared the journey along the way. I realized about a month ago that I don't even have a copy of the first draft. Or if I do, it's buried way, way, way back in my email, and it's going to be going on a pilgrimage to find it. But the fact that I don't even have a copy of the first draft, that feels a little sad to me, just because it would be nice to go back and read that and just see how far I've come. And that's kind of why I'm sharing my art journey now and why I'm sharing my art now, because I want to be able to look back at what I'm putting out on the internet now versus what I'm putting out in a year versus what I'm putting out in 5 years versus what I'm putting out in 10 years. And I want to see the progress, and I want to take you on this journey with me. And I know that will likely, it's probably going to summon the trolls and the haters. And in fact, it already has. Excuse me. I've been talking for a while. My throat is sore. But I have a much thicker skin now than I did, when I first started writing. So I think I can handle it. But yeah, I want to take you on that journey with me. And I'm also while I do want to improve my art, and while I do see a lot of things I don't like about it, I'm still pleased with what I've created, because, as I said, my goal is not to create, I'm not creating. Okay, the product isn't to sell prints. The product isn't to sell the art itself. The product that I'm creating is the writing and the music, and the art, it's there to enhance that. It's there to add to that. And, I like being able to share with you what I think certain characters look like, or what I think certain places look like. I like being able to invite you into my fantasy world. So, yeah, I'm sharing my journey, and I'm really excited to be on this new journey. And I don't totally know what it's going to look like or where I'm going or how to get there, but it feels really good to be on this journey. Yesterday it snowed here a few days ago, so we're kind of snowed in. And yesterday I spent the whole day just mucking about in my sketchbook, working on my face shapes, working on my eyes, starting a drawing of my main character, Aurora Green, and it was the best day ever. It was the best day ever. It felt so good, and also it felt good to be creative while still being able to get a break from writing, because I've been working very hard on my copy edits for the Near Impossible Quest, which comes out in the springtime. But it was nice to take yesterday off of the Near Impossible Quest, give my brain a break, at least in that way, and do some drawing. Still be in my creative process, still be in my creative flow, still be in New Camelot, my fantasy world, still be in my story, but in a different way. it felt really, really good. Yeah, it felt really, really good. Thank you for listening to this talk. I hope it was inspiring or helpful or interesting. You know, if you feel creatively blocked, I always say go back to your source motivations. You know, go back to the reason why you wanted to become a writer or a musician or an artist or a cook or a gardener or whatever. You know, go back to why. What's your why? For me, like, I remember reading Beatrix Potter as a kid and seeing the illustrations and reading the stories and just feeling like I had fallen into the most wonderful world and just wanting to explore that world, like wanting to step into her illustrations. I think they're watercolor. Wanting to step into her watercolor illustrations and just become part of the world. I just remember that world was and is so real to me, and like that's part of my inspiration for my fantasy world, you know, to make it feel like really real and just, yeah, to make it feel really real for the reader. Just remembering that, you know, it really helped me get back in touch with why I'm doing what I'm doing. If you would like to read the Sun and Moon Saga, the books will be linked in the description and in the comments below. Be sure to follow me on my social media and also sign up for my newsletter. When you sign up for my newsletter, you do get the first couple of chapters of Aurora and Luna for free, sent to your email, so you can see if the Sun and Moon Saga is the right fantasy series for you. I think that's everything. As I said, I've got another book coming out, The Near Impossible Quest, the third installment in Aurora and Luna. And also my band, Ghost of a Girl, we have our debut album coming out in March. More information on both of those things soon. Until next time, stay cozy, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye!